Hey everyone, today I'm coming to you on a wonderful rainy day here in Oregon, which only feels appropriate talking about what's going on here in Oregon. And today specifically we're going to be talking about the new Senate Bill 501. Now, this bill is currently still in committee, so it's not yet about to be voted on, just yet at least. So we still have time, and that's exactly why I wanted to do this video, giving you guys my thoughts on what is contained in this bill and some options for those of you out there who may agree with me, some options of what you can do moving forward to help voice those opinions and increase the likelihood of putting an end to this bill before it becomes law. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to put a link below this video to where you can actually find this bill in its entirety. It's only 11 pages long. I have it all printed out right here, so you can definitely afford the time to sit down and actually read it in its entirety, so you can see everything I'm talking about in context, and in addition to all the other things that I won't even be covering in this video that is contained within this bill. Now, I have everything again written out here in front of me, so I'm going to be doing my best to take some of the things in here verbatim. If I am kind of paraphrasing some of the things that are included in this bill, I'm going to have the actual text over here on the side, so again you can read it in context if you don't want to take my word for it. The first thing I want to cover in this video is in section 6, and this is in reference to the magazine capacity ban. This says a large capacity magazine means an ammunition feeding device, whether fixed or detachable, with the capacity to accept more than 5 rounds of ammunition, but does not include any of the following, basically being any tube-style feeding devices for 22s, but again, you can read more about that in the bill itself. And it says that after 180 days after this goes into effect, you basically have to either destroy your magazines, turn them into law enforcement, or remove them from the state of Oregon. So why do I disagree with the 5-round magazine capacity limit? Honestly, I just don't feel as though 5 rounds is adequate for personal protection in any context. If you look at statistics from all over the country, or even here in the state of Oregon, and you look at law enforcement hit percentages in officer-involved shootings, those percentages can be as low as the single digits, which means that it's going to take far more rounds than the number of people attacking you. This is especially applicable to handguns specifically, which are the most common tool used for personal protection, where the handgun calibers traditionally and typically are not effective fight-stopping rounds in of themselves. Typically it takes several rounds to very vital areas of the human body in order to stop that threat immediately. And given the statistics we have from all over the country, those 5 rounds may not be enough to stop an attacker, especially if you have multiple attackers, as we see in home invasions, again, not only here in our state, but all across the country. From an even broader standpoint, if you wanted to still maintain the firearms that take those high-capacity magazines, such as, my Glock 19, which has a traditional 15-round magazine, if I wanted to permanently modify it to only be able to carry 5 rounds, there is no option for me that exists currently to be able to restrict it to that limit. So even if I wanted to obey this law as written, even though it's blatantly unconstitutional, I would have a difficult time adhering to this law. And from an even more pragmatic standpoint, how would we even enforce a law like this? With over 300 million firearms in private ownership here in the United States, there are easily millions, if not tens of millions, of magazines that would exceed this capacity limit. So by extension, there's easily tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of magazines currently in the state of Oregon that would exceed this limit. And how do we expect law enforcement to actually be able to enforce a law like this? If you look at other states in our country that have passed similar laws of magazine capacity restrictions, and you look specifically, I believe it was New Jersey who just passed a law like this, they had a grand total of 0 magazines turned in after their law went into effect. Just in that one case alone, you have probably tens of thousands, again, if not hundreds of thousands of people who went from law-abiding citizens to criminals by doing nothing different in their everyday life. One thing that I think is very important to mention is that it says specifically that law enforcement is exempt from this magazine capacity limit, and that's something very important that I'm going to touch on later in the video. Now, the next concerning aspect of this bill that I'm going to talk about comes in the very next section, which is section 7. And this says that a person may not receive more than 20 rounds of ammunition in any 30-day time period. It also goes on to say that if you want to purchase ammunition, you have to go through a background check similar to what you would have to do to purchase a firearm in this state. So to more fully break down this section, the first thing I want to mention is that we already have universal background checks here in the state of Oregon. In order for you to purchase a firearm, you have to fill out a 4473 and go through the process of a background check to attain a firearm. So if I've already shown that I have no criminal background, I have none of the disqualifying aspects that restrict me from owning a firearm, why do I then need to do another background check for every time I want to purchase ammunition? Not only is that completely asinine in my opinion, it also clogs down the state's resources, or OSP, who currently has to do those background checks currently. Now they're going to be inundated with thousands and thousands more background checks per month, which is going to be an enormous drain on law enforcement resources. Another thing worth pointing out is that especially in the case of handgun cartridges, they're sold in quantities of more than 20 rounds. For example, here I have a box of 9mm, a very common, prevalent caliber for handguns here in the state and all over the country, and this comes in quantities standard of 50 rounds. So I find it exceptionally unlikely that manufacturers of ammunition are going to have to set an entirely new packaging standard to be able to manufacture quantities in 20-round increments just to fulfill the people here in the state of Oregon. So what they're effectively doing is restricting your ability to purchase ammunition for your firearm. They may not be explicitly stating it that way, but that is the effective outcome of a 20-round per month limit. I want to also point out, as someone who has instructed and performed recertifications for people getting their armed security license here in the state of Oregon, I can say from experience that if you're only shooting 240 rounds a year, which is your yearly legal quantity, you are not going to maintain the proficiency to safely and effectively use a firearm in defense of your life or someone else's. And let's say you wanted to take a training class somewhere. A lot of the classes that I've taken are 1,000-round count classes. That would take more than 4 years to individually collect the ammunition for a class like that. Now, there are allowances for use of ammunition to a more unrestricted amount if you're using it at a specific firing range like the one I'm at currently. However, let's think of the pragmatic aspect of that. People own calibers ranging from super common 9mm to some pretty oddball cartridges that are no longer manufactured anymore. Is it reasonable to expect that my local range is going to have on tap 8x56 Hungarian ammo to feed some of my old surplus rifles? Is it reasonable to expect they're going to have 7.62x25 ammo to feed some of those more oddball handgun calibers out there? It is just simply impractical for a firing range to have an unlimited amount of options of ammo for someone to actually have to be able to feed the firearms that they own. And then again, let's say that my personal choice of carry ammo, which currently is federal HSTs, is not available for use at that range. So that means I have to purchase my own ammunition, which can come in 50-round boxes, which again would be illegal for me to purchase. I then have to purchase that ammo and then run it through my firearm to make sure I'm proficient with my carry ammo and make sure that it feeds reliably in my gun. And then I have to wait another month before I can actually buy that ammo again to carry. Again, it is effectively disarming people and keeping them from being able to adequately maintain their skills to be safe and responsible with their own firearm. And to top it all off, I really think it's important to have a discussion about what the Second Amendment actually means. A lot of people like to throw around what the intent of the Founding Fathers were, who clearly have no understanding of the environment in which the Second Amendment was written. And it's not like it's hard information to find. You can read the Federalist Papers for yourself, which is effectively a commentary on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and they lay out their ideas pretty clearly. The intent of the Second Amendment, as it was written, is to have an armed populace which is capable of effectively deterring tyranny. And that is simply not something you can do if you are limited to only 240 rounds a year that you can have personally in your home, let alone having only 5 rounds per magazine. Now, I think it's really important at this point, before I talk about what we can do to stop a bill like this, to talk about some important things that we all should understand. I recognize that most of the people who are proponents of a bill like this one do not hate the Second Amendment, do not hate guns. All they want is some what they believe to be common sense regulations to keep firearms and ammunition out of the hands of people that would do us harm. I understand that. However, I feel as though this is a misguided attempt to succeed in that goal. If you look at states that already have regulations like this, like magazine capacity limits or restrictions on how much ammunition you can purchase, you can tell that gun crime has not been decreased in those states. States that have the highest gun control typically also have the highest rates of gun crime in America. You look at cities like Chicago, States like California, Washington, D.C., there is rampant gun violence in those states no matter how many restrictions they try to put between criminals and firearms and ammunition. So it is my sincere belief that even if we were to pass a law like this, and even if you could get strict enforcement of it on the part of law-abiding citizens, the activities that are hoped to be stopped by this will not be stopped. And I think to effectively communicate this to people, we have to understand where they're coming from, which means not mischaracterizing their own ideas. And in order to do that, it's going to take a lot of self-reflection on our part. I talk to a lot of people who are very pro-gun and very passionate about the topic, who whenever the topic of a bill like SB 501 comes up, they start throwing insults and derogatory terms towards the people that are in favor of something like this. And I can guarantee you that is not the way to win hearts and minds and win people over to your side. While I fully understand that there are people who would love nothing more than to take all firearms away from law-abiding citizens, we have to recognize that most people do not feel that way, and to characterize them as such is going to do nothing but make them less likely to listen to our points. Now, I'm not saying that we should compromise on things like this, but again, we have to have those conversations with people. We have to understand where they're coming from, why they feel the way they do, so that we can adequately communicate to them why we feel the way we do, and why we feel that the laws as they currently exist are already infringement enough on our Second Amendment right, let alone trying to add more to it. So, what can we do as gun owners and proponents of the Second Amendment to fight something like SB 501? Well, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link below. The Oregon legislature basically has a representative finder. So all you have to do is click on the map where you live, and it'll automatically populate the name of your local state representative and senator, give you their phone number, their mailing address, so you can contact those people directly and let them know how you feel. I actually just did that this morning, contacting my local senator and my local representative. Now, I think it's going to be extremely crucial that if you do choose to reach out to those people, again, you don't start name calling, you don't start using straw man arguments, that you just clearly communicate what your opinions are and why you feel that these laws have no place in our state legal system. Another thing we can do is try to expose people that may be friends of ours to firearms so that they can understand that law-abiding citizens are not the threat. The people that would obey these laws are not the threat, and that even firearms in general are not the menace to society that some people would make them out to be. So invite your non-gun friends to go out shooting with you sometime. Take them out to the range. Start them out on something small like a .22 or something like that, something small and unintimidating, so that they can experience for themselves what it's like to shoot a firearm and understand that they're not this monstrosity that the media makes them out to be. Again, we're not going to win people over to our side by throwing words like libtard or gun grabber out there. We're only going to win people to our side by showing them what is actually going on with firearms. Another option we have is sharing videos like this one. I'm not the only one to make a video on SB 501, and specifically with this video, I've tried not to make it a circle the wagons, preach to the choir type video. My goal with this is to reach people in the middle and hopefully on the other side of the aisle to communicate why I feel SB 501, while maybe has some good intentions, is not the bill that we need to be made law. Again, there are things in here that are fully non-threatening. In fact, if you read the synopsis of this bill in the Oregon legislature, all it talks about is secure firearm storage, and that is a very popular thing to a lot of people, and understandably so. However, what we need to do is clearly articulate the things in here that are not positive, like having to get a purchase permit, which I didn't even talk about in this video, or the 5-round magazine capacity limit, or the 20-round per month purchase limit. So I'm going to do my best to make this video as shareable as possible on the different platforms that I post it on, whether it be YouTube or Facebook. So if you agree with me and you want to have other people hear what I have to say, definitely share this around. And if you disagree with me, I would be more than happy to talk with you. In the comments may not be the most productive conversation, because it's really hard to have a productive conversation in YouTube comments. But if you'd like to contact me directly, you know, my email address is out there, and we can have a one-on-one discussion if you want. We can even video it if you want people to hear your side. But my goal, again, is to have a productive conversation on this topic, and again, inform people why this bill is bad and what our best course of action is to fight bills like this. And again, education is number one. So again, if you'd like to have a conversation about this with me, I'm more than open to it. I'll probably have some contact methods in the descriptions of where I post this video. And again, I'm going to be hopefully extending the opportunity to have a discussion like that with my local representative and senator. More than happy to travel up to Salem and have a sit down with them and communicate my ideas. Again, I didn't cover everything in this bill because I just didn't want this video to be super long with how long people's attention spans are. So I would highly encourage you to read this bill for yourself. Again, it's only 11 pages. It is very easily consumable. A lot of legalese in there, but you can definitely read through it and understand these ideas for yourself. Now, the thing I wanted to close with, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, is talking about the exceptions to law enforcement in this and why something like that scares me. Now, this is a point that was very eloquently stated by someone on Instagram. She goes on by the handles Stilettos and Shotguns, or We the Female Official. I'll have links to her Instagram below. But she did a very good job of articulating the danger of relying on law enforcement to keep you safe. A Supreme Court case in 2005 made it very clear that law enforcement has no duty to protect your life. And that was again reaffirmed just last month in Florida. A federal judge threw out a case against the law enforcement officers down there who failed to keep safe the students at the schools that had active shooter situations there. So while law enforcement has no legal duty to act now, they are actively trying to restrict your ability to protect yourself. We have to come to a point where we are not reliant on our government for everything. We have to have some level of self-reliance. And in my opinion, the most important thing that we have self-reliance on is our own personal protection. We have to maintain the right to be able to protect ourselves from those who would do us harm. Even if you live in a place where you do trust your law enforcement to save you, when the seconds count, police are only minutes away. There was a woman here in Oregon who had to hold a person who intruded into her house at gunpoint for 27 minutes before law enforcement was able to make it to her house. I don't even want to imagine what could have happened in those 27 minutes had she not had the means to protect herself. Please recognize that it is our own duty to defend ourselves. And while I have an immense amount of respect for law enforcement, they can't be everywhere, and they can't always respond fast enough to protect us in situations like that. So again, I hope I've clearly articulated my feelings in this video in a way that makes it easy to understand. If you have any questions, definitely get in touch with me. But anyway, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.